melting. That is a lot of sun.
It'd be much preferable if this was the evening, just like the night race in Singapore.
It's vastly approaching though. It is 5:30. So greetings from the Daddies. We are in round 15 and we are bringing you the highlights from Singapore.
Back in our part of the world, Joel.
Singapore. It's our time zone.
Yeah, it is.
It's our time zone.
Right on our time zone.
Yes.
Have to say it was late in the evening, so pretty much European time.
Yeah. Oh, look, as I said before, Singapore's never been my favourite race. It's good from the perspective of, because when it's night time in that darkness, and when you see the race, everything all lit up, it's really, really clear to watch. Yeah. But it's another Monaco.
It is
in a way. It's another Monaco.
It's a little bit more of overtaking, but it makes it difficult.
The putting of overtaking.
Well, you got two key overtake spots, right? So at least you got two more than Monaco virtually. But
not a complete blowout of the race. Of course, there was the issue of the coffee bet, which Jason...
What was that bet, by the way?
Coffee on you, if I'm right. I reckon there's going to be a safety car in this race. When has there never been a safety car in Singapore? See how I get stuck with a bet? I haven't even said anything.
Yeah, Jason bet me, and not like I even had a choice. He just said, "Oh, I bet you there's going to be a safety car." Yeah, because there just hasn't been one every single Singapore race since the inception of Singapore.
That's right. Which was what year, Joel?
4.
So yeah, it's every single race, but. You know, a bunch of good drivers, you know, every driver on the grid, including Grosjean's a decent driver. Who's to say that they couldn't have got through unscathed? Wrong again. So, yeah, I think I won the coffee bet. This was the first race that we actually had no grid penalties. Everyone actually was able to get off in the order they placed in qualifying. Wouldn't have been great if they just were able to race. And if it weren't for the incident we'll get to in a moment, everyone would have finished too. So
yes, that's true.
It was
that's
very
true.
close.
That's true.
You know, you almost had your coffee.
So, some interesting things about Singapore. I think Singapore is the only anti-clockwise circuit.
There's a couple on the circuit.
I don't think of any others actually at the moment, off the top of my head.
I think Texas is.
Is it?
Yep. I think Austin, Texas is anti-clockwise, which wouldn't surprise me, being America.
Backwards American people.
I think Brazil is the same.
Is it?
Are you going to put a coffee bet on me for that? I'll say anti-clockwise. I don't know, actually, for sure. I could be wrong. But
Bet he does. He just wants a free coffee.
There's only a couple on the circuit. Yeah, everything else is clockwise, yeah.
So, more often than not, in fact, 8 times out of the 11 times that they've raced in Singapore, pole position has won the race.
Yeah.
Follow the leader. So, first night race of the year, with the next one being
Abu Dhabi.
And then of course Singapore being tropical as it is.
Yeah, that certainly has an influencing factor on driver performance. It's a very grueling race from a physical standpoint, so it certainly bears relevance here. Whereas others are just hot. This was hot and humid.
Let's get to it. Right, so starting off at number 5, we have, so straight off the bat, lap 1.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez. Very, very unfortunate because he took out his teammate. Like, I don't know. Like, what was even really funny is the fact that when he drifted across, Jason and I are both watching, just going, what? What? What was he doing? Even to the point where Esteban's like, oh my God, Sergio hit me. And Sergio's like, I gave him enough room, I don't know what. We were thinking,
He realised what he did, right? He took out his
teammate.
He? Well,
he didn't admit it.
Well, assuming he didn't then, and then he realised halfway through the lap, we're actually admitted on the team radio that I've just taken out Ocon. The sunken feeling he must have felt sitting in the cockpit, knowing he's a shareholder of his own team and he's taken out his other compatriot, probably didn't sit well with him.
Either way, though, desperately needed points that Force India needs. Ocon, he needs to be showing his medal right now. We think that Esteban deserves a seat next season. Arguable whether he's going to get one or not. And Singapore never gave him the opportunity to show what he can do.
What's fascinating is on the point standings, I think there's only a few points separating Perez and Ocon, but Ocon's actually had 3 less race finishes than Perez, right? So there's a testament to head-to-head teammate
ability to deliver when he's actually capable of doing so.
Yeah.
Sergio, what were you thinking? You Grosjean. Thankfully, the crash didn't greatly affect anybody else on the grid, except for actually who picked up the wheel rim? Was that Sorokin?
That was Sorokin. Yeah.
So Sorokin basically picked up Ocon's wheel rim on his front wing there. And that was quite funny to watch because we all thought that was damaging.
Well, that actually did influence how some of the things did play out because he would have been black flagged for having that.
Pretty much, if he'd have left it on there, he had to pit.
He had to take him out of the pit, so he was the earliest of all the pitters. It meant that it really affected the rest of the strategy for the Williams team for the remainder of the race, but it put into place some very, very exciting rear of the field overtake moves and otherwise livened up the Singapore race to Joel's earlier point. So that was good.
Which brings us to number 4.
How do you say 4 in Singlish, Joel?
Sure. Oh, in Singlish?
Yeah. Well,
that would be 4 la.
Is it officially
4 la? You gotta have the la at the end.
That's right. Joel.
1 la, 2 la, 3 la, 4. 4 la, 4. 4, okay? 4. You take 4. 5. We like 5. But in any case, Sebastian Vettel had a quite early pit. Didn't exactly have a whole bunch of tyre choice to go to, unfortunately, due to the fact that during qualies, poor team decision with tyres, etc., etc., etc. Basically, they didn't have a whole lot of data going into the race, and which kind of made a bit interesting from my perspective of, given the lack of data, I don't understand why they didn't just go straight to the softs. They didn't. They went straight to the ultras, which basically then dictated the pace of what Sebastian was able to travel at. And they didn't really read tyre degradation properly on that. Hypersofts, man, as with every single time that the hypersofts come out, those things just, it was like melted butter, especially in Singapore. So this season, Ferrari's making a kind of a bunch of weird decisions on their qualifying, tyre choices, when to pit. Especially in this scenario, it kind of felt like Mercedes faked them out a bit, where chatter over the radio, they kind of had this thing where they're like, looks like Lewis is fading, it's fading. And even Seb said, doesn't look like it from our end, sounds like shenanigans.
That's right.
And sure enough, he was right. So what actually happened was Vettel came in for his pit, thinking that he's going to come out a little bit better off than Lewis. So rather than basically Vettel either coming out right on his backside or in front, which I think that was what they were kind of hoping for, didn't happen. Basically, Lewis just pulled out all stops.
I found the strangest decision, or that was not so much the fact that they brought him in virtually as the first car to take a safety stop. It was that they actually threw him on ultra softs, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, they did.
So who was to say at lap 14 when they brought him in that the ultra softs going to last him the remainder of the 45 laps?
But that's my point. That was never going to happen, which is why I don't understand why they didn't go. If that was their strategy, was to go to a one-stop strategy, they should have just gone to the softs.
Correct.
But what I'm saying is, in the Lewis scenario, I think what Ferrari was hoping for was that they were correct and Lewis was fading, in which case there was no way that he could put out any more extra pace on the tyres that he'd started with. Not the case, but it ultimately meant that Lewis stayed out in front and kept it. Alright, so point number 3. 3. McLaren. Alonso.
Solid performance.
Oh, look, considering all the DNFs.
6 in total for the season.
6 in total?
Yep.
Finally for him to finish a strong, solid P7, which he hasn't done since...
Melbourne, I think, was the last P7. But this was actually officially what they say is to be the legitimate P7. Because even in Melbourne, with Bottas, the way he fared in his miscomings there, he
with Max.
Yeah, you had the top 6 all finish in the top 6, as is expected, I guess.
Yep.
But by no attrition as well of any other driver, he actually
correct.
came in P7, which is a fantastic boon for McLaren, Alonso, the strategy, the team. I mean, even Van Dorn had a fantastic finishing in P12. However, sitting outside the points, very unfortunate.
As well, I think, what was he, 10 seconds behind?
Yeah, he only
Ricciardo?
finished 10 seconds behind what was Raikkonen and Ricciardo. Remember those number 4, 5 and 6 with the inclusion of Bottas there in 4th.
Were well behind the top 3.
They were.
Well behind the top 3.
And so in P7, he only finished just over 10 seconds over the P5, P6 guys.
Yeah. So clearly demonstrates what I've been saying all season long. Alonso is fast, and he's driving faster than his machine really should be. And when you compare that to Stoffel, who... Look, legitimately, Stoffel is also struggling with that car.
Some interesting stats we've been collecting, Joel. We've statistically actually looked at all the drivers this year, and whilst you've been saying all year he's fast on race day, and he is, he's just amazingly so. Alonso, without doubt, is the fastest driver on the grid who capitalises between qualifying on Saturday to final placings on Sunday by a factor of an average of just over 5.5 places. And I mean, that's considering he's had 6 DNFs and he's only completed 6 races less than 15, so 9 overall, and he's categorically in front of every other driver and makes up 5 places an average is a massive thing for them. And so the demonstration of that this weekend was great for the team, both in terms of tyre strategy. So he started off on...
Ultras.
Softs. He ran long on softs. He pitted on lap 44.
So started on Ultras, Supers, Yellow Ward Supers, and lap 44 changed into...
Softs, mate. Super softs.
Yellow Ward... Well, I said the Yellow Ward, but why did I say that? I don't know why. I know the yellow. So, sorry, my bad. Alonso started the race on Yellow Ward softs.
Yeah.
Super softs.
Softs.
I was adding extra bits wherever I can. And the lap 44 changed to Purple World Ultras to finish the race off.
That's it. And that was good.
One-stop strategy.
That was good,
Very smart.
They pushed him long. He had a tyre preservation strategy all the way through, so that played out very well for them.
No, they did really well. And I think that McLaren, they're starting to get their act together in terms of pit team management.
Yeah. So good finishing overall for McLaren.
Very happy for McLaren.
And well earned and well overdue.
Exactly. Which now brings us to point number 2. Max Verstappen. My boy Max. What an amazing race. I feel really, really happy for him. Something that I picked up over the team chatter was he kept complaining about the false neutral on his engine. Now, to what we understand has happened with his car was Red Bull, of all the teams using the Renault engines, had decided to start using the Spec C engine, and apparently they hadn't quite had enough time on the dyno to work out all the fuel mappings. Singapore played havoc with the engines. Now, to my understanding, what was going on is it's very, very possible that engine might have been running a bit lean. What Max was describing was he actually had to, when he was changing down gears, had to actually ride the brakes and actually keep the revs up just to stop the engine from stalling. So do you think that he was actually struggling with that vehicle the entire race, keeping the revs up, keeping that engine into that range so that it was basically not moving into the false neutral? Kudos to him. He had an opportunity to basically attack on Lewis, where Lewis got caught behind Grosjean, and he basically decided that there was no chance of him really achieving anything out of that, backed off, and that was a smart move. Retained his position number 2 and finished strong. And that's probably, I think, that maturity coming through.
Well, I think this is an area that Max will improve on as the years go by, but he certainly is a racer to be not taken lightly. The fact that he actually had some of those technical issues, as you described, that he needed to overcome in the car over the course of the weekend was admirable, and he did a beautiful job in not only qualifying strongly, but also finishing strongly and very, very close to Hamilton, as well as overtaking Vettel on the pig exit.
That's right.
The stall on the release out of the pits whilst not preferred, still didn't detrimentally affect
That's right.
his ability to be able to get in front of Vettel. So it was some really, really close wheel racing there as he was exiting after his pit stop. So that was fascinating to see. Interestingly, to that particular pit stop strategy, I mean, they actually wanted to wait for Hamilton to come in. So Hamilton waited a couple of extra laps after Vettel pitted. It then gave the Red Bull the clean air that it needed to try and put some quick times in.
Yep.
Which effectively allowed him to bridge a pit stop window, because the issue with Singapore, like Monaco, is that, of course, as Hamilton's controlling that early race pace, there's no pit stop windows opening up for any of the rearward drivers because the tempo's being controlled, there's no gaps emerging. So on the release of Vettel coming in and upsetting the balance of team strategy, and then Hamilton coming in next, and then Red Bull pushing for 2 laps before they came in, it allowed conceivably Verstappen to get back in and then, of course, do the undercut and then capitalise on what was a great opportunity there. So
Exactly. So, before we get to number 1, as usual, Mentionable. Before we run out of light, Jason, quickly.
Yeah, so on lap 38, Sorokin, apart from the issue that he had with the potential black flag that he would have been issued if he didn't come in, he was nursing his tyres all the way from virtually lap 4 through to the end of the race. That meant that anybody taking a pit stop in the race ended up falling to the rear of the field and then having to compete with Sorokin. In this particular example, Grosjean, it meant that there was an interesting little battle there emerging between Grosjean and Sorokin. And so what happened was Sorokin wasn't obliged to let him through.
No.
And, of course, Grosjean was having his own little battle with the Williams. Just a couple of interesting guys at the front of the field were racing their way through, and he didn't let them through. And he was actually driving quite erratically. So as a result of that,
just to remind,
stewards
remember,
saw
it
that.
was a blue flag scenario as well, wasn't
Absolutely
it? So
blue
he
flag.
was actually being waved through. And I think Grosjean actually did say that he didn't see the blue flag.
He was having his own race with Sorokin.
Yeah.
I get that. So Hamilton saw what was going on. Verstappen, again, another real mature assessment of what was going on ahead of him, saw that Hamilton was catching Hamilton as a result of these two going about their own business. So he backed off, didn't capitalise upon a cheeky chance, and eventually Hamilton got through, but Grosjean was issued a 5-second penalty. I think that the Mercedes team have been developing at the same sort of rapid rate that Ferrari have, but Ferrari's taken all the accolades lately because of the advancements that they've made since last year. But what's interesting at the moment, at this point of the season, is they're starting to see a couple of chinks in their armour emerging, whether it's strategy, whether it's being able to maintain consistency. Whereas if you remember early in the season, Mercedes had some real reliability issues. Touch wood, that sort of thing is now well behind them.
Number 1.
You can't go past Hamilton's solid performance from start
stellar.
to finish. He was consistent. He had an absolute blinder of a qualifying on Saturday. He followed up with a fantastic performance on Sunday. Great start, and really didn't put a foot wrong all the way through the race.
Even as I said to you on race day, I was calling it, he's like a ghost. And if it wasn't for Rogro backing him up a bit there, I think that nobody was going to catch class of his own.
So who do you reckon we give the Daddies driver of the day to this week, Joel?
Well, I called it last week in Monza, so...
I think everyone would say Hamilton because he's on the power rankings as being number 1. But why don't we give it to Alonso?
Yes. It's like you read my mind.
Yeah. I think you have to give it to Alonso this week.
You have to.
The P7, the P8s, 9s and 10s, they're all pretty bog standard. Leclerc finished in the top 10, good finish by him in P9. But Alonso just can't go past
I completely agree. Well done, Alonso.
Yeah, there you go.
And we'll see you very soon in
Mother
Sochi.
Russia. Bye for now.